Hello, Sapaners, South Asian folks, and friends. Welcome to the last Sunday of the month event hosted by the South Asian Peace Action Network, or Sapan. Today, our topic is navigating challenges, building unity for a stable future with a country focus on Bangladesh. This is a very important and interesting topic as most of us are curious about the events that unfolded a few months ago in Bangladesh. It was a breaking news, and each one of us saw the events in Dhaka live or almost firsthand through repeat telecasts on media for days at end. Yet we, at least I, still feel that there's something about the whole situation that I could not wrap my head around. I want to know more from friends on the ground. What happened and why? Who started it? Who was behind it all? Should it be celebrated, condemned, or just passed over as another country's internal matter? What are the learning points for those in the neighborhood? Why do some features seem to be like a deja vu, particularly to those of my age group? Will the uprising catalyze Bangladesh society into a better shape? Better for whom? Who suffers? What next? Well, these and many such questions boggle the minds of many, including myself. For me, it is personally important as I was born and grew up in Pakistan, learning Bengali as a second language and watching Bengali dance dramas both on Pakistan television. Then one day it was all gone, separating me from my best friend Farida, who returned to her home, 42 Zikatola, Dhaka, Bangladesh. I still remember the address as I mailed her handwritten letters for years. Being a Pashtun from Balochistan, my family and I could well relate to those who were 1,000 miles away in 1971. We have lived with the survivor's guilt since then. Hence, I jump on any opportunity of getting to know about my brothers and sisters in Bangladesh, who I miss living with, and look forward to getting updates about them today. Well, as we start, I request everyone to please mute your mics. Also, please introduce yourselves in the chat and use it for questions or comments. We request everyone to stay on topic and be respectful. Be patient with the technical difficulties. As always, we invite suggestions and feedback from everyone. I will now ask Khawar Mumtaz in Lahore, our eminent Sapan co-founder and board member, to share the Sapan 3-point founding charter. Over to you, Khawar.
Hello, everybody, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever we are. I feel very privileged to read out the Sapan Charter. It will be soon up on your screens also. The founding charter, the Southasia Peace Action Network, is an alliance of individuals and organizations who believe in a minimum common agenda, that is South Asian peace. It's been around now for a few years, but it is to promote the welfare of the peoples of South Asia and calls on the government and peoples of South Asia to work towards instituting soft borders, visa-free South Asia, visa on arrival, or at least ease of visas and economic cooperation, to allow freedom of trade and travel to each other's countries. The second founding charter point is to ensuring human rights and dignity for all their citizens, including religious and ethnic minorities, women, children, and other oppressed communities, and collaboration and cooperation in all areas, particularly related to public health, culture and legal reform, education, environment, climate change, water issues, disarmament, demilitarization, and denuclearization. It was endorsed on 28 March 2021 by over 90 individuals representing various organizations. And you can see the initial report if you go to our website. And if you want to endorse the charter and join South Asia Peace Action Network, please click this link and become part of this family, which is really invested in peace. So with that, I would like to now, there's a whole list, if you go, of the endorsing organizations and individuals. There are, we're very pleased to announce that we've got almost 100 people, 100 organizations who are members of Sapan, as well as some very eminent people from across the South Asia who are members of it and are active members of it. So we hope to have you also as our active member. I would like to now move on, and we feel very privileged to request Sapan volunteer Faisal Lalani to share the In Memoriam section. Faisal is a global community organization who was born in Hyderabad, India, and is now based in New York. Hello, welcome, Faisal. Oh, I pass it on to you.
Thank you, Khawar Ji, and hello, everyone. I'm honored to be tasked with upholding the Sapan tradition of commemorating those whose vision for a peaceful region we take forward. Luminaries like Dr. Mubashir Hassan, I.A. Rahman, Asma Jahangir, and others who you see on the screen who left us before Sapan was born. We honor comrades who were with us when we started and have since passed away, like Rubina Sehgal, Kamla Basin, Admiral Ramu Ramdas, and Karamat Ali, and others. We would also like to commemorate some progressive stalwarts who have passed away since our last Sapan meeting in October. Rahat Sahid, writer. Saida Gazdar, writer and poet. Khalid Ahmed, journalist and editor. And V.T. Rajshekhar, founder and editor of Dalit Voice. Thank you all for commemorating these amazing lives with us. Let's have a moment of silence now.
Thank you, Faisal. That
Thank
was
you.
very moving. We now come to our panel discussion. Today, we look forward to hearing from an impressive lineup of speakers from Bangladesh, who will provide diverse perspectives on nation's challenges and the future. We have with us Professor Anu Mohammed, Dr. Syuti Sabur, Advocate Manzoor Mateen, and Arjeshri Chakma. Sushmita Prita, a leading journalist, writer, and researcher in Dhaka, will moderate the discussion. She is op-ed editor, The Daily Star, and focuses on gender, human rights, labor rights, and globalization. I now hand over the floor to you, Prita.
Thank you, Fauzia Ji, and thank you, Sapan, for arranging this dialogue. As most of our audience knows by now, the July uprising began as a peaceful campaign against the quota system in government jobs, but it turned into a mass uprising after law enforcement agencies fired upon unarmed protesters, killing over 1,000 of them and injuring countless others. Although the movement was initiated by students and they were its lifeblood, it was ultimately successful because of the widespread and spontaneous participation of Bangladeshis from all walks of life: rickshaw pullers, garment workers, academics, activists, homemakers, street children, business communities. By then, the people had had enough. They were tired of injustice and extrajudicial excesses, of flailing state institutions, of systematic suppression of dissent, of disenfranchisement, of the debilitating state of the economy, and of making ends meet, even as MPs and Awami League affiliates siphoned of billions of dollars of public funds without so much as an iota of remorse or accountability. Gen Z, who came of age during Sheikh Hasina's tenure, led the way for an incredible moment of unity, fueled by dreams of an inclusive, just, and democratic society. It truly was something to behold. But as so often happens post-revolutions, even before the euphoria of toppling a dictatorship subsides, fractures begin to surface. Calls for justice translates to revenge and mob attacks. People's anger and disillusionment with the status quo are easily co-opted by those who know how to weaponize them. Promises of much-needed structural reforms eventually drowns anti-majoritarian screams of victimhood. In Bangladesh, though the movement was built on the premise and promise of anti-discrimination and inclusivity, we soon found out that not all of us were on the same page about what those terms truly meant, and that now that we no longer had a common enemy, we could no longer agree on a common vision for a prosperous and just Bangladesh. 100 days have already passed since the fateful day that Sheikh Hasina fled the country on August 5. There have been ups and downs, moments of celebration as well as of concern. Today, we'll talk about this complex moment in our nation's history, our expectations from the interim government, the challenges of breaking free from the fascism that festers within ourselves and the body politic, and the possibilities of cross-border organizing and solidarity for a democratic, tolerant, and peaceful South Asia. We have with us today Dr. Anu Muhammad, a public intellectual and former professor of economics at Jahangirnagar University, Dhaka, Bangladesh. He has served as an editor of Shorbodon Kotha, a Bangla journal on socioeconomic issues since 2014. He was the member secretary of the National Committee to Save Oil, Gas, Mineral Resources, Port and Power, and has authored over 40 books on topics including development, gender, globalization, NGOization, environment, and neoliberalism. We also have with us Dr. Shruti Sabur, an academic activist and endurance athlete. She's currently an associate professor of anthropology at BRAC University. Her core research interest has been the metropolitan middle class of Bangladesh. She has been involved with multiple recent social movements and has written about women's movements, nationalism, and shifts in the political field. She has also been an active member of the country's oldest and largest women's organization, Bangladesh Mahila Parishad, for almost 3 decades. Ajay Shri Chakma is an undergraduate student majoring in political science at Sweetbriar College in Virginia, USA. Recently, she interned at Greek Picture Library and Chakma Raj office in Bangladesh, focusing on Chittagong Hill Tracts. She participated as a youth delegate at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues and voiced the rights of Indigenous people in Chittagong Hill Tracts. Lastly, we have Manzoor Al-Mateen, an advocate of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh and a freelance journalist. Besides practicing before the apex court of the country, he casts news for Channel 24, a news-based private television channel. There he also co-hosts a weekly program on current affairs titled Mukto Moncho. Earlier, he hosted over 100 episodes of another weekly program titled Antarjatik, which focused on the intricate mechanisms that are at work behind major international events. Thank you all for being with us today. I'll ask a first round of questions, then we'll open it up for the audience. But before we move on to our discussion, can we have a group photo with all the speakers to be spotlighted? Okay. And then one with all the speakers and volunteers.
Who's taking the picture?
Sarita, Bina. Are we taking the picture?
Sorry. I don't know who's taking the picture.
Sure, no, Sarita.
Hang on, let me just remove the spotlight and make it gallery.
Too much trouble?
No, we'll just do it. Just take a quick picture. Who's taken the picture? Sarita, have you taken it? Can't hear you. Okay, I think we have.
Let's do another round of pictures at the end of the show as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, with our chart.
No, it's breaking up for some reason. Can you still hear me?
We also.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Anubhai, we'll start with you. Can you give us a brief overview of the past 100 days? How has the new interim government approached the challenges of political transition, and how successful has it been in addressing public concerns regarding transparency and inclusivity? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Sorry.
No worries.
Thank you, Pritha, and thank you, everybody. It is, I think it's very important to address and attend any forum in South Asia, because South Asian solidarity is very vital for changing things in all countries in South Asia. Otherwise, we'll be. It is not a matter of like country-specific thing. There are issues which we need to bring into the larger forum, like South Asia and more beyond South Asia. What happened in Bangladesh, you know, that because of what Pritha said very briefly but very correctly, that there were huge issues, different issues of anger of the people. There was unemployment, there was concentration of wealth, there was unprecedented corruption. there was harassment and torture on different section of the people, repression, and also there are some laws, draconian laws, which created a situation where people were, there was a fear, culture of fear and situation, environment of fear everywhere. So after this uprising, since 5th August, people were trying to understand, or people were expecting a fundamental change from these things, that we don't want the past to be repeated. We don't want to see the repetition of the past. What past? Number one, the authoritarian rule. Number two, the problems of discrimination. The sources of discrimination should be addressed. Number three, the poverty and inequality. And number four, the ruling party hooligans, repression in every places in the society. So do we want a new Bangladesh? We want a Bangladesh free from discrimination. This became the expectation. So with uprising, July uprising, there was a big. It was very natural that after all the killings and resistance, there was extraordinary repression from the government, and there was extraordinary resistance from the people. And there was a very highly creative and highly participatory mobilization since 15 July, 16 July. So there was a national unity against autocracy, authoritarianism, and torture and corruption, and undemocratic rule, and destruction of institutions like election. So expectation was very high, became very high, that we'll build a new Bangladesh. We'll build a Bangladesh without discrimination. But the problem is the foundation of discrimination are very strong. There are political source of discrimination, there are economic source of discrimination, there are cultural source of discrimination, the ideological source of discrimination. So there are, it was expectation was big, and also the challenges were big. So since 5th August, we experienced some positive thing, like for example, the formation of different commissions on workers, election, women, and institutions, bank corruption, financial sector, energy sector. These commissions were formed to understand the reality of the past and to find the way out from that. This commission, there are members of the commission, most of them are very well-known and very capable persons. So we can expect that they will bring some major recommendation to go forward to build a different Bangladesh. So that is very positive thing. Number two, government has promised to scrap Cyber Security Act, and they already declared abolition of the indemnity law, which was an instrument for the government to make huge corruption in energy sector. So these are very positive things. The matter of concerns are, like there are mob violence that started on 5th August that is still going on, that mob violence in different places, in different institutions, education institutions, and because of mob violence, there is among some group of people, like ethnic minority, religious minority, even minority within Islamic groups. There are different streams within Islam, and the streams, Sufi streams and shrines, they are like, yesterday we had a huge gathering for unity in diversity. So there, one person from the shrine, he was saying that they are living in constant fear because of this possibility of mob violence against them. Women, and especially the gender, other genders, they are also facing some problems. And workers, most of all workers, who were the very important participant in the July uprising, the garment worker and other informal worker, they are struggling to find their area wages and to demanding area wages. When they are coming on the street, government is not addressing them very friendly, very hostile attitude. And recently, the auto rickshaw pullers, there are millions of them, are in a problem because of the government decision. So this is the same scenario. In the past, many governments show that they don't see the workers as they see workers as other, as a different, and as a group who can be discriminated against, which can be tortured, or which can be discriminated against. So these are things. In the last 1 month, 2 workers were killed because of they were demanding their area wages. The workers' demand and workers' struggle, that is a matter of concern. And also,
could I request you to keep it short? We have 5 minutes.
Yes, this is the final one.
Final point.
And another matter of concern is in the situation in Chittagong Hill Tracts for ethnic minority. The situation have not changed in Chittagong Hill Tracts, like the plain land. They are still suffering from the militarization and the different type of repressive laws. And there also the 4 persons were killed because they were trying to bring their demands. So this is the on the one hand, we have some positive development, but we have still facing a matter of concerns. Thank you for the moment.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry, I should have specified earlier that we'll just roughly take 5 minutes each for each of the questions so that we have enough time for answers later. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions about Bangladesh. Shruti, I'll come to you now. For over 2 decades, we've been witnessing a global wave of populist mobilizations from the Arab Spring to our July uprising. You've written about how these movements reflect a loosely organized, issue-based transversal politics, often embodying majoritarian sentiments. Articulated as contests between the people and some power elite, such sentiments can sway from left to right at any time and are just as amenable for absorption by the forces of uncivil society. Can you elaborate on this shifting field of power in post-uprising Bangladesh? Anubhai already mentioned it a little, but I'm sure you can give us a little bit more context.
Thank you, Pritha. Thank you, Sapan. I'm honored to be here, especially the people I've been reading for so long and citing them. Many of them are here. I'm indebted to them. So I will start from the point that the uprising, what has been happening after uprising, the erasure, is not something that we didn't expect. This was something, because if you are a social scientist and if you're looking into the political field for too long, you know this kind of exclusion will happen. But also we had a cautious optimism that this new narrative of reformation would include more voices. That was not there. Now, if you look into the if you look the basic structure of any state, that state is, if state is at the apex, you have civil society in the middle and the people at the bottom, right? So in previous regime, the problem with the state was that state was a party state. So in 15 years' time, it was AL state. It was not state which was delivering the services to the people, rather than it was used, manipulated, and the resources were extracted by a certain group of people, a vested interested group. The problem was that, and the civil society was not really in a critical position to question. And I would say at some point they were actually play the role of complicit group, because one of the major job of civil society was supposed to be like put the state in check. So there are two things that happen that kind of created a space for uncivil society to get the fodder. So one of the things that has happened is that all these parties, like especially the party in power, Awami League, actually it kind of, more than corruption, I think the largest problem with the previous regime is that it kind of totally tore up the political fabric. Means that there was the whole democratic process was like all of a sudden became like a one-party politics. And even in the one-party politics, the party was not really serving the interests of the people who had money. And civil society became deeply politicized because part of the civil society was aligning with the state. So like I actually backing up the regime as well. So this is, under this condition, when this uprising happened, it is understandable that people actually were fuming. There were a volatile political field which they needed to articulate their desires and everything. And of course, the uncivil society was not far away. So they took the cause and they become part of this mass uprising. So the things like which part, and part of the civil societies as well. So now it gave both civil and uncivil society to articulate their desires and critique the state, and of course the fall ensued. But one of the major problem with this is that in the new government, many of these things were new, whatever the alignment of the government is, many of the things were very hazy. So people who actually, suppose I'm part of the Bangladesh Mohila Parishad, we were protesting against the mass killing since 18th of July. And I think 18th of July to August, we had 5 different seminars, symposium, demonstrations, talking to different generations of women and the leaders and the activists and the coordinators. So one of the results we got from this conversation is that even though women led the movement, in many parts, women were at the forefront of the movement, and women, the working class was joining, and there was indigenous groups who were part of it, diverse religious groups were part of it, and most importantly, indigenous groups and LGBTQI plus groups were the part of this whole movement. But soon as the regime fell, we see a certain group of people were deciding without having any, including any of these groups that we are talking about. So all these erasures happened in last 100 days. Of course, there are magnificent people who are in different kind of commissions, who are individual, they are great, but we don't know what the process and how these things are happening. And most of these commissions are Bengali Muslim men who are leading the commissions, where women are not there. Even if you look into the coordinators, the women coordinators are largely absent from the scene. And so the thing is, and the kind of politics that is coming out is problematic, because it is, again, it looks like it's same old. There are many conversations that is happening. There's a public discourse that is happening, but what is the result? What is the route map? We don't know that. And in that route map, all the people, the diverse group of people that I have mentioned are not represented. So who's deciding the fate of the nation? Is it the men, handful of men, Muslim men who are deciding? And I don't want to have this alarmist and talking about, oh no, uncivil society is taking over. It's not that. I think there's a major contestation, and we are constantly in a situation, state of flux where things, we still have time to make things work, but till now, I do not see much of a hope, to be very honest.
Okay. On that note, we'll go to Ajashri, because you've talked about how certain groups have been erased and how certain groups have not really benefited from all of the promises that were made during pre-uprising and during the uprising. Ajashri, how have indigenous populations fared in new and inclusive Bangladesh? And a second question to you, how can we address the historical injustices and ongoing military occupation in the hill tracts to ensure the inclusion of marginalized communities in the national democratic agenda?
Thank you, Pritapa, for having me here. Juju, greetings in Chakma too, and Namaskar Shobaike jara Bangladesh theke join korechen. So if I start with like after the 5th August, so like anger spurred when the interim government leader used Adibashi in one of his speeches on 25th August, and mostly mainstream Anwar Bengalis protested against it. And there were even disagreements about the CHT ministry appointee in the interim government, but he's doing as much as he could from his side. Apparently, he is here just for the sake of diversity and inclusion. But ultimately, indigenous people, like, they predicted there would be attacks on the minority population after the post-revolution, because the mainstream targets minorities whenever the state is vulnerable. There has been numerous lynching incidents post-revolution that Chittagong Hijraks were not spared from either. According to the media reports, 4 indigenous individuals were killed during the communal violence that happened in September. There were clashes between Bengali settlers and non-Bengali regarding a motorbike thief. The police report clearly stated that this motorbike thief died by hitting a tree, but not by any non-Bengalis. Yet, the Bengalis took matter to their own hands and vandalized the houses and businesses of indigenous civilians in Kakachuri and Rangamati of Chittagong Hijraks. During this time, the social media took a hit with all the baseless blames onto the non-Bengalis, the indigenous people. They tagged us separatist, anti-state, and kept spreading misinformation. We were even subject to further sexual harassment online, especially the indigenous women. Even my indigenous classmates who were studying in public universities, they even had to hide just to save themselves from all this drama. And there were talks about including the Chakma Circle Chief Rajadebashish Roy in the Committee of Constitution Reformation, but our optimistic hopes were crushed when we found out that there were neither him nor any inclusion of minority representative in the committee. Moreover, the Bengali settlers expressed their immense joy by sharing this news on their social media. So it's just like coincidence or a conspiracy. So even there are like lots of confusion, like who are settlers basically. So there has been so if I say that like it all started during the administration of J.R. Rahman in the 1980s, Bengalis from the plainland, either affected by flood or any other reasons, were settled with the help of government in the hill tracts and displaced the indigenous people from their own land. They are the ultimate pawns to be used for any kind of attack against indigenous people in the hill tracts. That is why there is a fear instilled among the indigenous people in this region. We think that like when there is a term we use, settler ajulan. It's in Chakma. It means that like settlers are coming to attack us. We need to flee like as soon as we can. So even after the July uprising, we all hoped to be included in the information as much as it could, but like as a Bangladeshi could, but like I don't know what's like what is the future going to be, but like there is a thing we would like to say that like we are Bangladeshis, we are not Bengalis, and I hope that we would be recognized as indigenous people in the constitution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll come back with questions to you. A little bit of dark thoughts that you shared and Shruti shared, but I'll come to Manzoor Al-Mateen, who seems a little bit more hopeful about the future. He just wrote a piece about 100 Days of Hope. Manzoor Bhai, how can we bridge divides and promote unity in the face of political and social tensions? What hope do you see for the future?
Thank you so much. I'm deeply privileged to be among such a wonderful panel. Some of them are my friends with whom I've worked. Well, I find myself optimistic because during the past 15 years, being a talk show host, I found people to be extremely fearful. They didn't even speak out in private conversations because everyone thought that speaking up could cause them to be in deep trouble. I had my guests being picked up from from the gate of my television station after they spoke up against the government. So I think that fear is at least lifted for a great many of us, not for everyone. I understand that. And people are speaking up. Professor Anu Muhammad would agree with me that people are flooding the seminars that are happening across the country, so many in Dhaka city, and different groups of people are getting their voices heard. That is very important. About the gathering we had yesterday, people from all the different communities from Bangladesh, they came up, they represented their cultures from Qawwali to Telugu songs to Chakma songs. So we have managed, I think, to portray that we are people of diverse religions, cultures. And if these voices are being heard, then change might just come. I understand that the commissions, they have not included everyone in the body itself, but the commissions are trying to hear from everyone, I guess. And they're reaching out to people. And that's something that makes me hopeful. And there are citizens' bodies that have come together, three of which I'm part. They are trying to reach out to people and trying to hear their voices. The rickshaw pullers, they have gathered, they had a gathering today. And people have been supporting. The civil society is trying to gather itself together. As Professor Anu Muhammad was saying earlier, that they were largely absent during the last 15 years. It was the regime, the intellectuals who supported the regime, speaking up all together in an orchestrated manner, sounding as though there was no other voice. But now different parts of the civil society, they're coming up, they're speaking up, and that is something very important. I understand that certain groups are more organized than ourselves, and they have a stronger voice in the social media and even when they're organizing on the fields. But if we keep up speaking, if we manage to continue our fight, voices would be heard. I believe that. I believe that Professor Yunus and the people around him, they're willing to listen to people. But as the students have pointed out very rightly in the very first few days of the movement, that we have managed to throw out a dictator, but the fascist regime, which includes the bureaucrats, the businessmen and other beneficiaries of the system, they're still pretty much there and trying to align themselves with whatever the new regime might look like. So when minority voices gather together and press on regarding their rights, there's a possibility that they would be heard. Every revolution or uprising, if you like, goes through this phase where you have this point where there is mass grievance, then there's a trigger point, you have an uprising, and then these difference of opinions, they come up and you try to find some common ground. And that's what we all have been talking about, the political parties, the different citizens groups, that we could probably agree about having free and fair election. We could probably agree about having a more credible judiciary. So if we can find these common grounds, maybe we can agree to have a start. I'm not saying that everything is going to change overnight. The people haven't changed, right? These are the same people who have preferred the majority's opinion to overrule every other opinion. But to have inclusive and pluralistic society, these voices must continue to fight. And if we can find a common ground that we all can agree upon, I think things could change for the better. I don't say that things are going to drastically improve. That is not just practical, but we could do a little bit better, because the new generation, the Gen Z, as we call them, they have ascribed the walls of their aspirations. They have spoken about a pluralistic society, a more tolerant society, a society where there is more of a sense of justice. And I think all the political parties heard that. They understand that the newer generations, who are the most important voting bank at this moment, they don't believe in the binary that we have lived in for such a long time. And I think the society at large must at some point of time acknowledge some of those demands and recognize that. And that's where I see hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Manzib Bhai. I think you're right that oftentimes the loudest voices are the most hateful ones, and we've been seeing progressive voices or minority voices being sidelined. So all the more reason for us to speak louder and to speak more often, so as not to let them take up all of the space and claim all of the credit for the July uprising. I'll come to one last question on my end before we open it up. We're kind of not running out of time, but I want to keep enough time for people to ask questions. I want to address the India issue because we've seen a lot of disinformation and targeted campaigns from India, particularly Indian media, undermining the July uprising, which has further fueled already simmering anti-Indian sentiments in the country. Can one or more of you speak to the deteriorating relationship between the two countries? And I also want to ask, how can civil society organizations in both the countries collaborate to counteract divisive narratives and promote a culture of dialogue and understanding? Anubhai, maybe we'll start with you and then whoever.
Yes. Please, can you please repeat the question?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, can you shed some light on the anti-India sentiment that's kind of simmering in the country that has a lot to do with what happened over the last 15 years and also the way in which the Indian media and the government has reacted to the uprising? So what can we really do as civil society to counteract these divisive narratives and promote a culture of dialogue and understanding? And to begin with, if you could just give some context to the sort of spread or exchange of hate between the two countries for the regional audience.
The problems with India is there are some very important and objective causes for the people's discontent on India's role in the last 15 years. We have problems in border killing. We have problems with water sharing. We have problem with many unequal agreement, contract, and some business groups. Like, for example, the Rampal coal-fired power plant, which is going to destroy largest mangrove forest in Sundarban. And again, Adani, who is very close to Modi. The signing contract with Adani is a very problematic, and it is against national interest of Bangladesh. This is also very illogical and very deceptive contract. Last regime, Awami League regime, was very much dependent on India's ruling class. And they were depending on India's support because Awami League did not want to go for free, fair election. They were trying to make a permanent settlement. Their rule, they are trying their best to keep in power with support from India. And once Sheikh Hasina said that we have given India so much things that India will remember it forever. So that is true. That is true. Sheikh Hasina said. And so Indian ruling class was very much dependent on Sheikh Hasina for their all anti-people contracts and their domination and making subordinating Bangladesh for their business interest and strategic interest. So now when Sheikh Hasina government, after fall of Sheikh Hasina, India's reaction was it is not unexpected. And diplomatically, it is very illogical. And Indian media, it is very interesting and also very disappointing to see that Indian media is behaving with the line of Indian ruling class. They were not trying to understand the anger of the people, why people are so much discontent on India. And they were trying to instigate the communal violence and trying to fabricate the issues of the communal problem. There are some incidents of mob violence against some minority Hindus or temples, but there are also instances of mob violence against Muslims groups, the minority groups. And there are some problems with the people who are not as Hindu, but as Awami League followers or Awami League leaders or Awami League beneficiaries. They were facing people's rage. So it is important to bring Bangladesh, people of Bangladesh and people of India. There is some sort of communication. It is very important to bring the facts and the people's anger and people's expectation. We want the friendly relationship with Indian people, but we cannot accept the India's dominating role against Bangladeshi people. So that India should understand, and Indian political party and Indian civil society should also be vocal on the issues and understand the people's voices and people's uprising, why it was against India and why Indian ruling class is behaving like why they are only depending on Sheikh Hasina. India people to people relationship has become very crucial now.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add anything? Okay. If not, we will now have a discussion with the audience. Please introduce yourself. Hello, anyone? You raising a hand?
I think Suti wanted to say something. She started. Maybe
sorry,
she should.
Sorry, please go ahead.
I think India has become a scapegoat for avoiding many things that we want to say but can't say. I think geopolitically India is a problem, but I think we really need to fix our own house and the problem with the democratic process. I mean, India can't be like, I mean, you can't blame everything on India, but there is a larger geopolitical situation, given the American election and all this new power alignment. I think we need to rethink that it's not. I mean, India is a problem, but there's a larger problem ahead, because the way the current regime is in position, the kind of alignment it has with the different nation state, and how we are going to be party of those conversations, larger conversations, that is equally important. So, and if we want to really put the previous regime through trial, we need to also consider what are the possible alliances and networks that we can use on our behalf. Because I think one of the major problem is, like, India, whatever relationship or equations we had with India is primarily our misstep. So Bangladesh as a nation state need to have a stronger diplomatic relationship within South Asia and across the world. I think that is something that I wanted to say, but also we also need to go through, like, if you look into the 50 years history of how the power dynamics change over the period of time, I think those are very crucial to also see and remember, because we see this whole market liberalization during the autocratic regime, where saw the American alignment was for Bangladesh. Therefore, the autocratic regime could stay in power for so long. And then in last 15 years, it was India and like collective power power alignment. So we also need to understand what is the newer kind of alignment and who is our God that we are serving. So who is our new patron that we are serving? So I think those are the things that is extremely crucial to understand. And India is one of the many factors, but that is not the only factor that I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Shruti. I think you bring up an interesting point. Who is the new patron we are serving? Are we serving anyone? Manzoor Bhai, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think we could follow the path that some of the South Asian states have already taken. We live in a very strategically important piece of land, right? There is China on one hand, a civil war going on in Myanmar. Then we have Sri Lanka having its own revolutions and changes. So we need to strike a balance between the powers. I understand that with Donald Trump stepping into the White House, things are going to be rather unpredictable, maybe. So in these murky waters, we would need to find a balance between the powers and stand up as an independent nation who can maintain balance between the powers, rather serving one patron like we have done in the past 15 years.
Thank you. Any questions yet? Otherwise, I'll keep on asking my questions. Okay.
My hand is up.
Tandem. Who's that? Do you want to ask that question, or should I read it out?
You can.
Okay, why can't I?
I
Please
just
go
ask the
ahead. Please
question.
go ahead. Please go ahead.
My question is that I think this is probably a good time to try and reactivate SARC, because that enabled a lot of people-to-people contact. And I think just now, when the governments are at crosshairs of each other, is the people-to-people contact that will bring about that kind of unity that we all seek. And peace will come when there's more peace. The last 10 years, we've not been to each other's countries. We've just not had, we're not allowed to go anywhere. And I think we have to restore that. And SARC is a platform for which we can now very strongly advocate. And I think Bangladesh is an important country to make a push for that. And since things are formulating and being formed, this is one issue that needs to be pushed also. So I'd like your views on it. Thank you.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
Well, I've recently been to Nepal and met some activists there. I've had an opportunity of meeting people from Sri Lanka who have been very active in the past movements. And all of us have noticed how when we had a blackout in Bangladesh, people in the streets of Kolkata, they came out singing for us. And how when there was a rape in a hospital in Kolkata, when people mobilized in Dhaka. So that people-to-people contact is there. It needs to have a structure. SARC could probably be that if the governments are willing to cooperate, or maybe platforms such as these could come up and bring the people together and voice what we want, that the unity we seek.
Thank you. I think there was a similar question. What can be done to avoid that India-Bangladesh becomes like India-Pakistan on a grassroots level? Some answers have already come. We need to have more platforms like this. We need to increase exchanges between ourselves. Is there anything else anyone would like to add?
I think media is very important. Alternative media, role of alternative media is very important, because the mainstream media has shown that they are not ready to listen to the people and to understand the reality. And Indian mainstream media and mainstream government, different groups and agencies are trying to show that the discontent of Bangladeshi people, it is not people's discontent. It was a communal thing. It was a communal. It is a Hindu-Muslim problem. That is not at all true. There are certain very important and objective causes for discontent of the people against India. Indian ruling class. We must separate Indian ruling class from Indian people. And Indian people and Indian people's representative, different political parties and civil society groups, also need to understand that people are different from the ruling class and the ruling government. This is not a communal problem. This is the people's uprising and people's discontent against the dominating a role of Indian government in favor of the highly autocratic, corrupt regime, the past regime. That became the very, very major problem. So this is the alternate role of India. And I spoke to some alternative media in India, and there we find some groups in India who are trying to understand the real situation in Bangladesh. That is very positive, and that is very, I think, encouraging.
Thank you. Wasif Jalal from Lahore wants to know what types of reforms are being discussed in Bangladesh. Manzoor bhai, do you want to take that?
There are, great expectations, right? When such a uprising happens, people expect everything to change. So we have a Constitutional Reform Commission, we have Electoral Reform Commission, Media Reform Commission, you name it. So commissions are there. People are talking about these different ideas of reform. But there is also talk about early elections from some of the political parties who are rather eager to have elections as soon as possible. And I understand that this government would be doing at least some reforms in the electoral system, probably in the constitutional system as well, because the caretaker government system is probably coming back in the constitution. So, and some reform regarding the judiciary as well. So these things are probably forthcoming.
There's a question from Julian Francis. You could unmute yourself, sir, and put your video on if you like. So, Preeta, you're muted.
Sorry. Julian bhai, if you're there, do you want to ask your question?
Here. I'm here. No, I was just going to make one or two comments. I was in Dhaka.
Would you mind starting your video? I'm sorry, would you mind starting your video?
Well,
so
I tried to start it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in Dhaka in January 1972 when fighting was still going on in Mirpur, and I wrote at that time to my father about the situation, and he wrote to me, revolutions need anger to get them going and calm reflection to build their replacement. It is never easy. Well, I think we are experiencing that at the same time. We talk about the massive corruption of the last 15 years. We shouldn't forget that corruption has been there from the beginning. And I've witnessed corruption under 3 different regimes within working in development projects within ministries. And it's just been much deeper in the last 15 years. And in fact, I have written in the media about corruption, and people have been very angry with me that why are you doing this? You might get arrested. But anyway, nobody took any notice of me writing in English. So, even in January 72, Bangabandhu was very angry about the corruption. Relief supplies were being sold, and in one meeting he said sarcastically, he asked, where is his blanket? Unfortunately, corruption has been here all the time. Again, we've talked about syndicates and so on. Well, on the evening of August the 5th, a BNP person in our road in Banani sent his driver to the local slum and gave it 24 hours to get vacated so that his people could come in. The people collecting the rubbish from our street, that group changed overnight. So everything is syndicated as it was before. And going back to the problems of the hill tracts, I was working with the International Federation of the Red Cross immediately after the peace treaty of 1997. And it was quite clear when we were visiting all the places, particularly Kagratari, that the military never wanted to leave there. They were getting a lot of money out of that area, cutting down the forests, getting all the contracts for the civil works, the roads. So there is a lot there's a lot that the interim government perhaps would like to do, but it's going to be very difficult to get anything started.
Thank you, Julian, for your comment. I'll take a few more questions, and then maybe we can have people respond more generally. Shehzad, do you want to switch on your video and ask your question? You there?
I'm here.
Maybe.
Sorry, I'm not. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so the question is really about the desire or the expectation we have about somehow reaching some kind of common ground, and even the expectation that we can get to a place of normal or functioning democracy. But the rifts that we're seeing on the ground, it's not simply disagreements, but real conflicts about what kind of Bangladesh is possible and desirable. And I think that the reforms that we are talking about are absolutely crucial, of course, but there's a lot of the agreements that we want on certain basic ideas about who gets to be a part of this Bangladesh cannot simply be achieved through reforms. So there are things that people have not been able to achieve in the last 15 years, still won't be able to achieve. Such as Uniform Family Code, for example, or peace in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. And I don't see how that we can expect any change in that without some kind of cultural program on the ground, and only the political parties can do that. And I don't see what kind of relationship the interim government actually has with these political parties is quite unclear. It's not really a question. It's people's opinions on how that can look. Thank you.
Shehzad, could you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you?
Where am I? Shehzad. I teach anthropology at Brack University. I'm also a PhD candidate in anthropology at the University of Texas at Austin.
Julian also didn't introduce yourself. I'm sorry, I didn't ask you. Julian has been working in Bangladesh for a long time. He's been working in the development sector. He's a veteran.
Yeah, well, yes, I don't want to add too much, but I was working with Oxfam in India before the Liberation War, and then I was in charge of a big refugee relief operation covering 6 lakh refugees, and then came initially at the in January 72, but then I was working in India after that, and came. I've lived 15 years in India and 34 years in Bangladesh.
Thank you. Thank you, Julian. I think we'll take one last question and then we'll get last comments from everyone. Some questions have come up. Hassan Bhai, are you there? Do you want to ask your question? Because I think that's resonating with a lot of people in the comments. Are you there? Will I ask your question on your behalf? Okay, maybe he's not here. So Hassan Bhai is asking, considering of bloodshed and injustice, can we expect something close to a TRC in our country? So a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to account for the numerous issues from the last 17 years and beyond, including the CHT. So with that'll be our last question. I'll come to each of you and get your last thoughts. If you want to respond to any of the questions that have been raised, that would be great. Anu sir, we'll start with you.
Yes, the problem is we have great expectation, as Monjir Mopin was saying. There was a great expectation for a great change of Bangladesh, but there are problems of, like, the main expectation was to bring Bangladesh into a new model of new Bangladesh without discrimination-free Bangladesh. But there are certain sources of discrimination, like class discrimination, gender, ethnicity, and religious. So if we want to address these sources of discrimination, there are fundamental problems, like we are working with new liberal economic model, and the institutions like World Bank, IMF, ADB are very much active, and the present interim government is also trying to continue with that. If that continues, then the sources of discrimination remain in place. So that is one problem. Number two, in the discriminatory, there are some groups who are like discriminatory politics, discriminatory culture, discriminatory their attitude towards gender and minority. So it is a matter of, like, it is a struggle, new struggles. The main victory of 5th August is, number one, the fall of long corrupt and undemocratic autocratic regime. That is one success. Number two, the opening up of like new thinking or new possibilities or new vision. And there are debates, there are discussions. These two are the achievement of 5th August mass uprising. But there are a lot to go. And if we, the peoples in civil society, the political parties who are anti-discriminatory politics and ideology and economic models, we have to do more for bringing people to fight this discriminatory politics in various levels.
Thank you. Shruti, last thoughts?
I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about is that we really want the interim government to function and function well. That is absolutely crucial for whatever Bangladesh 2.0 project that we are heading towards. And I think in order to do that, interim government must actually see its limits or limitations and draw a boundary what they can offer and what they can't. And that is something that they really need to have hold on to, because they are trying too many things in a very short period of time. The time period is unclear. So having so many, how to say that, like unsettling territory, how you are moving forward, that is very crucial for us citizens to know that this is where the country is headed. And then we can align for, against, or even have a critical solidarity with them. So that is something that we need to think through, or that this interim government need to think through. And they also need to decide whether they're a party or this is like it's just a short period of time they're there to initiate certain things. Because if you are thinking like a party, then you really need to articulate that. That is not clear to us. So that is something that I think we really need to know. And I think after 90s, it was possible to establish democracy. I mean, certain kind of democracy, even for a short while. I think we can learn from our history, and also what kind of dreams and aspirations we have after this many years. I think it's possible to, most important thing would be to do, like, for all the parties to reorganize their political party and like have some semblance within the party, have some order within the party, so that we can have a democratic practice, whether it's a new party or an old party. Because without party politics, the the representative from the civil society can't really create an interim government, and it can't be a sustainable model. So like I think both are equally problematic. If you have a party state, that is a problematic. If you are having a civil society state, that is a problematic proposition. So I think we really need to, and whether you want Awami League to like have a trial, do that, whatever you want to do, just do it, and urge the political party, whoever it is, doesn't matter, whether it's left, right, center, Islamist group, or any religious group, make them bring their house in order. Like, we need a political process to do this, and interim government should facilitate that process, except like, and make a clear distinction where they stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Arjashri?
Yeah, sure. So as we're talking about democracy practice and also like TRC, so if I share my perspective from Hilltracks, so even if it's my grandparents' hometown, so whenever we are entering Hilltracks, we have to show our ID. Like it's like a required, like we need to like answer lots of questions asked by the military, because Seychelles is a very deeply militarized area, and they ask like how many days we're staying, like why we're visiting, which relatives we're gonna like visiting, like so many questions even like. So and if we are like talking about the like the interim government leader, so I think he was asked a question in one of the interview. They said like what's his thinking about the Hijraks, and then he said that like he does it's not in his priority, because he said that like the next elected government will do like if they want to do, but like he doesn't want to do anything about the Hijraks. So that's what he mentioned in his interview. So I think like it's not his priority right now probably. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Not his priority, and probably something he cannot even achieve, because Manzoor bhai, you're saying there's a lot of freedom, freedom of the press, freedom for everyone, not necessarily freedom for everyone to say what they want. We still can't say certain things about certain topics, militarization and CHT being one of them. But we'll still end on a hopeful note, so we'll come to you. Last thoughts.
Well, ultimately, the country is going to be run by the political parties, and something we dearly need at this moment is a change, a shift in the political culture of the country. And there are talks about that. BNP, along with some of its allies, have come up with a 31-point declaration of the changes that they're going to do. They're talking about national unity government if they are elected. But before all of that happens, we need the politicians to understand that Bangladesh is a country of many different kinds of people, some of whom are minorities in the country. And we must understand that without all of them being included in society as equal citizens, Bangladesh does not really graduate to a modern state. So in order for that to happen, the political parties must change. And for that change to come, people must continue to talk. People must continue to organize. If a small group of people can organize regarding a particular topic, that possibly would have much leverage on the national politics. So if you are talking about women's rights, we must continue to gather on that. If we are talking about rights in the Hilltracks, people should continue and continue to organize within themselves and keep talking. And at least there is that space to talk right at this moment. And before that fades away, before new structure of fascism starts to emerge, we need to make sure that it doesn't have as strong as a grip as Sheikh Hasina did. And there must be justice for the July killings. That's something that must happen within the span of this government. People must answer for the killings. And after that, justice has been done, we can talk about reconciliation. That is also very important, because we cannot exclude a very large portion of our society from the nation itself. So that is also very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for your invaluable input. Back to you, Fauzia Appa.
Thank you, Preeta. Oh, what a wonderful end to a fabulous, thought-provoking and educative discussion. Whoa. One thing I learned today is that I need to learn more about this beautiful, complex, and ever-evolving country, Bangladesh. Did I pronounce it right? Bangladesh? No, Bangladesh is how we used to pronounce it. Okay, so also, another thing I learned today is what happens in Bangladesh does not necessarily stay in Bangladesh. It impacts the course of the whole region around it. So stay vigilant and updated by visiting Sapan News Network regularly to know about the whole region. So as you all know, Sapan is a voluntary organization. We're all volunteers in this. However, if you like the work we do and would like to contribute to help us keep going, please donate. I mean, you can join in as in the form of your donation. All contributions are tax deductible in the USA. So I would urge my people living in USA to please go ahead and contribute. Since Sapan supports Sapan News Match, any amount donated now, an equal amount will be matched by INN, the International News Network. So this is a good time to donate. We'll get double of it if you please chip in some money. Also, we cannot emphasize enough the importance of your feedback regarding this event today. To further our cause, please find the link to the feedback form in the chat. So in the chat, would you please post the link for the feedback form? A huge thanks to everyone who made this event possible and to all of you watching today. Thanks, of course, to all our worthy speakers and our moderator who did a wonderful job today. A big thank to you all, our event team, all our event team behind the scenes, as well as those who you saw today on the screen. There are many more behind them who are not yet shown on the screen today. Well, Khushi Kabir and Sarita Bartola conceptualized and put the event together. Do you believe it? Sarita is a wonder lady in our team, and Khushi was the lead, conceptual lead in the whole of this event, also connections and everything. Special thanks to volunteers, Pragyan Srivastava, one volunteer who didn't want to mention her name, but we really thank you, and Sharaf Gantareen for their work before, during, and after the event. We would also like to acknowledge Khawar Mumtaz, we call Khawar Appa or even Rani Appa in very, very loving way, and Kavita Srivastava and Beena Sarwar for their crucial help that we could not have done without. And Lalita Ramdas for the support and inspiration, not only for today's event, but for our team always. We will now formally conclude the event and stop the recording and live stream. However, if anyone wishes to stay on and continue engaging in discussion or networking, you are most welcome to do so. Thank you all. Stay well.
Thank you.